to change this to public. Okay.
Okay, it says live, and we are live.
Hello, effect enjoyers.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome back to office hours.
How's it going?
How is it going? How was your vacation, Mattia? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, well, it was nice.
Let's see if we have any questions in the office hours thread yet.
It's...
Oh, look. Tim dropped some questions in here. Effect V5 when? Oh, and there was another one. Why is RxJS better than Effect? Tim trolling me even when he's not here. Any news on the Honeypot channel? I don't know. Maybe you should go in there and post and see if there's any news.
And ask. Yeah.
Josh York Dev, thank you very much for the Prime. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. Hope you enjoy the stream. Somebody told me that I need to get more interesting decor for my room.
I can lend you some.
Yeah, I need some of the plants, Mattia.
I can ship you someone.
Yeah, I need some plants.
Yeah, the problem with plants is that you start and either they disappear or they take over your room.
I've got a huge garden out back, and right now it's overtaken by vines. I have to go out there and clean up the garden. Is today the Explain Cluster and Kubernetes episode? No. I feel like I explained a little bit about cluster last stream, so go watch that one. Go rewatch that one since you were there. Rewatch it. Relive the enjoyment of talking about effect cluster.
Yeah. What's better than experiencing a talk about effect cluster when you can experience it twice?
That's right. These streams are recorded and put on YouTube for a reason.
So no one broke production recently?
Yeah, tell us about your breaking production stories. Well, speaking of breaking production, Tim has been doing some interesting work in the V4RC about reducing our external dependency footprint. And so has Julio. So Julio recently merged the... someone said I did a terrible job last time. Yeah. Julio did merge his work on getting custom arbitraries into Effect V4, which is pretty cool. So I think that removes our dependency on fast check, and now Effect should have its own implementation of arbitrary. Let me share my screen. Can I share? Pull this over here. How doth one share a screen on Riverside? Every time I open this app, things are in a different place.
Yeah, every time they enjoy moving something around.
So let's take a look. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Julio merged this unstable schema. Where is it? Source. Is it schema arbitrary? Native arbitrary is this one. This. So by working on integrating like arbitraries natively into Effect instead of depending on fast check. Not that fast check's a bad library, it's a great library. We just saw an opportunity, one, to again like reduce our dependency on external dependencies, and then also to better integrate with Effect like natively. Like we saw opportunities also for performance gains, as you can see here. Like pretty much in every category, we were able to speed things up for arbitrary generation, which is pretty cool. So now you can generate your own arbitraries without installing fastcheck with effect. So where is the module? So arbitraries are a pure description of values that can be generated and shrunk, which is pretty cool. And if we look at the tests, where are you? This one. You can sort of get an idea of usage. Where are we? So you create your schemas normally as you would normally. And then you can create an arbitrary from that schema. And then to get random values out of that arbitrary, you sample the arbitrary, and there's different things you can do to control how the arbitrary is actually sampled. But anyway, I think it's pretty nice to be able to generate arbitraries without depending on anything external. This is natively integrated in effect. And if I'm not mistaken, also, I think it uses the random.
I think it uses the random service.
Sample effect. Yes, but I think it uses the. Where is sample effect? Internal sample effect. Okay. Internal. Where does internal come from? I should really open this up in my editor. I don't know why I'm doing it this way. Internal arbitrary runner. Internal arbitrary runner.
There it is.
So I think that it uses the random service that's currently there. Resolve master seed, hash seed. I might be wrong, but I wish we had Julio here to ask. Natural. Let's look at natural. Oh, that's just a.
I think that we should look into resolve that seed, that function resolve master seed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
So, oh no, this is the what gets the seed for the actual RNG.
Which uses random.nextInt, yeah.
If you don't pass a seed, I guess this is how it generates the seed. Make generator. Model. Make generator. Generate. Just trying to see generate random. Generation random. So Julio may be actually implementing his own little random thing here. That might depend on effects random service, but anyway, I don't want to spend too much time like digging into this to try to figure out, but I'm sure that he's integrating with effects random service. And anyway, I think the cool part of this is that you can generate arbitrary values now without installing fast check. The other cool thing that I think was merged, maybe, hang on, is that we have in effect, where is it? Source?
Schema binary?
Yeah, where is it in the stable category or is it in the unstable category?
I think unstable, if I recall correctly.
Unstable. All right, you know what? Give me 1 second. I am going to just open this up in my editor because this is crazy. Hold, please.
I mean,
now I have to figure out how to switch screens. Good God. Share a different screen. Window. Ghosty. Share. Okay. Zoom in a bunch. Go back to
it's an encoding. It's not in schema, it's an encoding. Unstable encoding.
Schema binary.
Yeah.
So I think schema binary is pretty cool because it is a native binary codec for it's a native binary codec for effect schema, which is pretty nice. So we were, by implementing this, we were actually able to, what am I in the benchmarks? Oh my God. Schema binary. Here we go. It's a binary codec for the encoded side of a schema, which basically means that when you want to take a schema and send it over the wire as binary instead of like JSON or NDJSON or some other format, you can produce binary over the wire via the encoded side of a schema now, without any external dependency. So we were able to remove the dependency on message pack by implementing this. And I think in many cases, we're actually faster and smaller than message pack. Let me find Tim's PR where I think he did some benchmarking. Packages, actually it might be in here. Hang on. Benchmark schema binary. I could probably run the benchmarks myself, but I don't really want to do that. I'd like to see if I can find Tim's PR, is PR, schema, binary. And maybe we'll look at speed up schema binary serialization. And I will share this screen. Share a different screen, Chrome tab, this one, share. So with this, you now get native like binary encoding support via schema binary. And in pretty much all of the cases that we're testing, we're faster than message pack. And if I remember correctly, there were some benchmarks that Tim had done also related to size. Is that what this is? No, this is ops per second. There were some benchmarks in one of the prior PRs that he had done where he did like size benchmarks. And in the majority of cases, we're also like encoding more compact binary than message pack, which is cool. So anyway, you can now get binary serialization support, and I believe it's now the default RPC serialization format.
Yeah.
So like cluster and any of the other RPC stuff that depends on RPC server, that depends on RPC serialization, sorry, uses schema binary by default. Sebastian, can you send me those as links, not pictures? and I'll pull them up. Let me take a look at chat. I haven't looked at chat in a while. Can we get a hint on the new abstraction layer on top of cluster? No.
No.
Mattia is back. What are we looking at today? Not cluster? No, not cluster. Surprisingly. Is schema binary used in cluster? Yes, it is now the default serialization format.
I am sure it is now the default for cluster. I am not sure if it's the default for RPC as well.
I think it is. We can check, but I'm fairly certain it is. I know it's the default in cluster. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Sponsor that man a beer, indeed. And the last thing that Tim was able to do with all of this work is I don't know if he merged it. Let me check. Effect, packages, SQL. Yeah, he did. So Tim also implemented a native Postgres protocol client, which means that we were able to remove the dependency on PG, the PG package, and instead communicate with Postgres over our own native client. And I think, yeah, in terms of performance, we were able to get some pretty substantial gains in perf with our own native client. In a lot of different, basically in every benchmark that we ran. And in certain cases, this was pretty substantial. Even with multiplexing turned on, we were able to squeeze a little bit more perf out than the native PG client. So a lot of cool stuff being done to remove external dependencies and allow us to have more native integrations with different things. And it's kind of like twofold. One, obviously, removing dependencies is a good thing. We can control the code, exposes us to less supply chain attack issues. But it also lets us obviously control the code and add features and integrate more natively with the effect runtime, which is in a lot of cases why we were also able to squeeze more perf out, because we're not having to call out to a different package, which may not be implementing things in a way that's as or as compatible with effect.
Also bundle size wise, because we are reusing primitives that we already have in effect. So we are not importing again utility functions, etc. that otherwise will already be included normally in your bundle with effect.
Yep. We want cluster. Turbofish, welcome back. Sorry, my Twitch chat. Hello. What is good? So anyway, this also shows that we're leveraging AI pretty heavily. Tim's been really found a workflow that works well for him in terms of being able to spec out these features and then implement them. So it's pretty cool. Sebastian, send me the link here. Let me see. I have to switch which tab I'm sharing because that's the way it works. Actually, I could just do this.
Copy paste the URL and that's it.
Okay.
That works. Thank you, Sebastian. That works.
Much appreciated. So these are the benchmarks. One of the early benchmarks that were ran related to the size of our own binary codec with fingerprinting enabled and disabled. So you can see it's obvious, it's less than half or it's in around half the size of message pack in some circumstances. Sometimes it's like closer depending on what we're actually compacting. But obviously more efficient than like ND-JSON in a lot of different circumstances. So anyway, I think it's pretty cool work that has been done over the last week. And like I said, it's been interesting to evolve our workflows, figuring out how to leverage AI most heavily, but in a way where we're producing code that like is semantic with the library, is like high quality, is not like just pure slop. So I think Tim's found a really nice workflow that works for himself. I've got my own workflow that I'm kind of working on still, but yeah, these are some very cool features, and we'll be continuing to evaluate ways that we can remove dependencies. I think even just last night, Tim was able to remove the UUID dependency, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
from where was it? SQL? Somewhere. I know I saw him removing UUID as a dependency. But anyway, maybe it was SQL PG. PG? I don't know. But yeah, do you folks have any questions about all of the new features that we're implementing in effect to try to reduce our external dependency footprint? Hi, my friend. I found out that you're very important in effect, so I take back the criticism. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's no big deal. It is not a big deal at all. I appreciate it, but I'm not that important. Is there any plan to get deeper integration with Drizzle? Specifically, I would like to represent tables using something like schema.model and then derive the Drizzle tables from that instead of the other way around, which is what I have right now. Probably not, unless the Drizzle folks do it, because they're maintaining their own effect integration now, and we purposely dropped Drizzle and Keisli as packages that we maintain with Effect v4 because the maintenance overhead was way too high, and not the Drizzle folks, but we found it a little bit hard to keep up with like changes coming from the Keisli folks, and we weren't really able to upstream a lot of different things that we needed to make things work. So I think it's a better split to have like the Drizzle folks continue to maintain their own effect integration, and we just maintain our native SQL integrations. So I'm a hobbyist. I only understand effect as a try-catch for larger JS code bases, but a lot of people I know who work on serious things are effect pilled a lot. Thank you and keep up with your good work. 07, my friend.
Thank you to you.
Thank you to you. We do our best. What is going on in YouTube chat? Yeah. It's all cluster news today. I haven't said the word. I haven't given any cluster news today, aside from the fact that binary.
We mentioned, yeah.
Cluster was mentioned. Oh my god.
Cluster mentioned. Oh my god.
In a supply chain attacks era, all those dependency removals are great. If performance is better too, what a wonderful world. Yeah. I mean, that's our thinking.
Indeed.
If we can remove a dependency, have a better, more effect native integration with something, and also get better perf and a smaller bundle, then it's kind of a win-win-win. The only like downside is obviously it's more code to maintain, but in like the AI era, the quantity of code is kind of amortized a little more. So as long as the code remains good quality, as long as the code base remains high quality, the like leveraging AI becomes less of like a problem or burden or whatever. Holy crap, you guys don't want to admit it, but Effect is actually becoming a complete framework for dev. We admit it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
We admit it. I admit it.
We've added the graph module. Sebastian.
The question is, do you really own the generated code? Does the team really understand this code? Yes, it is very thoroughly audited by us before we actually put it out into the library. Obviously, that does not mean it's not without bugs. No code is free of bugs. It's impossible. But we are not of the opinion that you should not read your code. Like, we are very much of the opinion that you should still be reading your code. We're not quite at the era of you can just, like, you know, turn off your brain and tell the AI what you want. We still think that maintaining a very high degree of closeness with the actual implementation is important. Where I think AI comes into play for us, especially on the library level, is helping us like spec out and experiment with ideas much faster. So like, you know, figuring out how to solve problems and like experiment with those solutions, you know, throwing away things that don't work, re-implementing them a different way. Like that speed is much faster with AI. So I think that for us, the key is continuing to understand the code, leverage AI for like, you know, those specific things, iteration speed, experimentation, architectural problem solving, that sort of thing. Definitely not like Effect is definitely not vibe coded.
Nope. But some say it's good if you want to vibe code. So
yes, if you want a vibe code, make sure you use Effect.
The question is, does AI understand what Tim wants?
Does AI understand what Tim wants? That is a good question. Does anyone really understand what Tim wants?
I mean, is even there a difference between AI and Tim? Aren't they the same?
That's a good. Tim is basically our resident robot. He is one of the most efficient individuals I've ever met in my life.
Wow. Indeed.
We've got Sebastian proselytizing Effect as a full stack framework. I mean, I think that we're pretty close to having the pieces in place. Like, I think using Alchemy for deployment, FoldKit for the front end, Effect for the back end in whatever form you want, having the ability to run cluster and workflow. I feel like all the pieces are there to write your entire application with Effect if you really want to. But it's not like one cohesive thing quite yet, but we're working towards it. Have you seen Effect MQ? Do you have thoughts? Yeah, I think that Adam put together a really cool package with Effect MQ. I think it's got some really useful ideas. I haven't like used it or evaluated it more thoroughly than just the tweet that he put out about it. But I think it looks like a really cool integration for Effect for running background jobs from a message queue. I want to talk to Adam at some point about it because I feel like the parallels with Effect workflows are kind of there's a lot of parallels with Effect workflow. So I would be interested to like talk to him about that at some point. What do you think, Mattia?
Yeah, I think as well. I think it could be fun to invite him here on stream and see the Effect MQ and also like discuss that, because like there is also a very interesting topic about like workflows or queues, pros, cons, and why one or the other. I think it could be fun.
Yep.
Cluster mentioned.
Cluster mentioned. You guys are incessant.
I wouldn't be surprised if Fifth like mounted a YouTube playlist with clips of just when cluster is mentioned from the beginning of the effect office hours up to today. Like cluster.
That's the entire playlist is just you and me, and anybody else on the Effect YouTube just saying cluster.
Cluster.
There's another Effect MQ posted in Discord. I haven't seen that one. I'll have to take a look. It's a cluster of cluster mentions. Indeed.
Yeah. A clusterization of clusters.
Cluster mentioned supercut. Sebastian wants to know when Tim is going to replace the Redis dependency. I don't know, Sebastian. Why don't you ask him? It's a good way to nerd snipe Tim into doing something is to ask him.
We will end up with Tim rebuilding Redis.
Oh God. FIWS is saying he's going to do that now.
I'm looking forward it, definitely.
Did we speak about arbitraries yet? Yes, we spoke about arbitraries.
Yes. I didn't check if we had other questions in Discord. Not yet. No questions.
Like temporal has workflows and standalone activities. Effect has workflows and message queue. Lots of overlap. Yeah, I mean, anytime you're building a distributed system, there's going to be a little bit of overlap no matter what, right? We talked last time about the separation between like what Effect cluster is and what Effect workflows are. Like cluster being the abstraction that we built for representing a cluster of nodes that are running entities that do computations via message passing. So basically like building an actor system. Whereas workflows are the abstraction that we built for allowing you to implement durable workflows. And then like you can run your durable workflows on top of an Effect cluster, but you can also run your durable workflows anywhere that you've implemented a workflow engine for.
Also, one thing that usually people should maybe look into more, understand more, is also like the various trade-offs or various solutions that are out there regarding workflows, because every solution has its way to implement durable workflows, and everyone has trade-offs. Like temporal has trade-offs on how you write your code. There is things like restate, I think. There are other ones, but everyone has its own like trade-offs of how they are built.
Yeah, somebody built, so Turbofish in my Twitch chat is saying that somebody had built an Effect version of Redis called Effectus, which was actually Ethan Nizer, who now is who's currently working at the Vercel on the domains team, I think still, maybe. And that presentation that he gave was actually at Effect Days, the last Effect Days, so our conference.
And for the ones that doesn't know, here on our Effect YouTube channel, I think we have the video recording of that talk that was given, I think, last year's, right?
I think it was, yeah. Have you guys looked at what temporal is doing? They're exposing the underlying building blocks of their... Ethan's not at Vercel anymore? Okay, I don't know. Okay. Have you guys looked at what temporal is doing? They're exposing the underlying building blocks of their workflows. I guess we already get that via cluster. I mentioned this because we're already deep in the temporal world, and I'm trying to get Effect to infect the code base. An Effect infection.
Infect. Let's rename the package to Infect.
Yeah, Infect. That's a really good name for a product. Infect.
Infect.
Have we looked at what they're doing? Yeah, I mean, I think that with Effect, we've always tried to build composable primitives that you can keep building on top of more and more and more. So I think we kind of already do that. I think.
Hmm.
Um,
And,
go ahead, Matthias. Sorry.
and also, I would say that probably if you point your clanker to the temporal docs and to the effect workflow engine implementation, it's not hard to get a workflow engine implementation that works maybe with your existing temporal definitions. So you can start defining today your workflows using the effect workflow syntax, so that eventually you can decide if you want to keep temporal or if you want to switch to something else. So that's like also one pro of like the effect workflow solution. It's not actually tied to use um, behind the scene effect cluster. You can swap the workflow engine and get something else. For example, there is, and that also gets better for the testing story, because you can then use like the workflow in memory for the testing story, which I think it's kind of a little bit harder with temporal, the testing story.
Yeah, where is it? Where's the PR? Here it is. Let me pull up. Actually, is this the screen I'm sharing? It is. This isn't the PR. This is my PR. I want Tim's PR. This one. I showed this PR the last office hours, but like this is a perfect example of how composable primitives and coding to an interface, not a concrete implementation, allow you to do interesting things. Like we talked about this last time, but we're working on Cloudflare native implementations of the cluster runner and the workflow engine interfaces. And like just by implementing those interfaces and providing them to your program, then you're able to like run your workloads on Cloudflare instead of whatever other infrastructure you were running on. Obviously, like there's data migration considerations as well when you're running like more of a distributed system. So you have to keep that in mind. You can't just like swap out the layer and expect your data to be migrated for you. But the point here is that like we can build integrations for many different things by creating a composable primitive or a primitive that's a good enough abstraction that then allows us to have multiple implementations. I tried my hand at building an adapter that allows you to run temporal activities inside effect in a temporal workflow in a way that looked like effect. So temporal activities as effect, essentially. But effect didn't run in temporal at the time. It was mutating globals, which I made an issue for. We've done quite a bit of work to try to improve that. Have you tried with effect v4? Does effect v4 still have the same problem?
I think that with v4 is solved, and I think that what you are mentioning is setting the global error stack trace limit, which was done in effect v3 to optimize the performance of when we capture stack traces for telemetry and for errors as well. But I am sure that with v4 it should work. But
yeah, I mean,
but I agree with Sebastian. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, Sebastian's got a good point here.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of platforms that impose arbitrary restrictions on the JavaScript runtime.
Yeah.
Like, for something like Cloudflare workers, like in worker D, I sort of understand it. Like, isolates have their own limitations, and that's fine. But like the restrictions that you have in temporal just feel weird.
What I don't like too much is the fact that rather than being like explicit on you should not do this, you should not do this because you should not do this because, or you should try to avoid this because, basically they have modes where basically something doesn't work and that's it. And that connects back to what I was mentioning before, that every clustering or workflow solution has its own pros and cons, and knowing them, then you can actually write and architecture your solution knowing that limitations and things like, for example, the one that was in temporal. Again, yeah, we were mutating globals, that's true, but we were mutating globals and then restoring back to the previous value in within like 3 lines of code. And so if you understand why there are those limitations, and that's like to try to produce deterministic behaviors, you'd understand that that's a fine restriction, because as long like you guarantee that you mutate a global, perform something, and you roll back, that's a deterministic behavior.
Yeah. There's a question in my Twitch chat. Does effect prefer bun over deno? Why? I don't think we have a preference for any particular runtime specifically. We have platform integration packages for every runtime. So if you look at, for example, like our file system abstraction, I think we have implementations for all 3 platforms now: Bun, Deno, Node. So yeah, I mean, we don't have a particular preference. We ourselves use Node just because it's been around the longest, and we like using PNPM. But like as far as effect itself, there's no preference for the library. We have integrations with all of them, so you can use whatever you prefer. Let me see if I have a good link. Maybe the website's docs can provide something about like file system. So here's an example, Turbofish. If you want to look at like an interface that then like has many implementations, file system's a good example. So in the docs, I think we show the example of providing the Node platform implementation to a program that uses the generic file system. But then you could like swap that out with Bun later if you wanted to, if you switch the runtime you're using. So.
And also, Sebastian like pointed out something that said that effect workflows has a huge potential to crush other solution in terms of UI, UX and DX and ease of development. And I definitely agree, specifically because we are again baked behind the scene by the effect abstractions, and that means that we are not tied to a very specific like architectural choice, environmental choice, like as we mentioned, Node, Deno, whatever, or specific APIs that should be available. Again, for example, if you like the DX of effect workflows, no one forbids, for example, to build a workflow engine that works in the browser by using like an indexed DB as a transactional storage. No one forbids that. Or maybe
Right.
you have like a complex client side application, or maybe an Electron application that could be like a good example. An Electron application that is purposely built to run local primarily because maybe it used like a local database or something. For example, my previous job was at an ERP company where we do a lot of warehouse management, and there are a lot of use cases there to have local database and etc. And that plays nice to have your own like Electron app and use the cluster primitives to do the coordination between different windows and, for example, with something that's doing the actual caching, ensure that the behavior is for specific entities is executing only in a specific location. That's a problem that it applies both to backend to front end. It's a primitive, it's a concept, it's something that applies to everything, I would say.
Yeah, Sebastian brings up a good point too. Like imagine you build your workflows, you locally can test them in
Yeah.
memory, you can simulate in the browser, like Matthias said, with maybe IndexedDB or something else, and then you could also deploy that same exact workflow that you ran locally for testing with memory in the browser with IndexedDB to Cloudflare or some other platform to run your actual production like workflows. You know, there was somebody in chat, see-through head mentioned that like Temporal also has a decent local DX. It has the CLI and temporal containers and such. That's fine, but like that's additional tooling that is very specific to that tool, right? Like anytime you introduce additional tooling that you have to use, like think about the story with Cloudflare and Wrangler. Like I hate Wrangler. I've told the people at Cloudflare this like for probably the last like year or so. Like I just wish that we could get rid of it, and that's why I'm a little bit bullish on the CF CLI, even though I don't think it's like fully right. Like I think they're making improvements by being able to by trying to get away from Wrangler. But in my opinion, like the best developer experience is Alchemy for Cloudflare, right? Because you don't need any special tooling. You need nothing. You just write your app. You can run it locally. You can deploy it to Cloudflare. It'll run there. Like anytime you introduce specific tooling that you need to be able to work with a particular technology, it's a whatchamacallit, paper cut that just doesn't need to be there. Like imagine, so I have an example. Share a different screen. I've been working on like doing some testing of Tim's like workflow implementation on Cloudflare durable objects. Like imagine you write your workflow spec, right? You write your spec for your workflow. Then you write your implementation of how that workflow should run. None of this cares about the platform or anything else yet. And like, but these two things are really all you need. And then depending on where you're running in memory, in the browser, in Cloudflare, in those different areas, you just provide the layers that you need to run on those particular platforms and you're done. Like, you know, we have a very large opportunity to make a very nice DX here, and we're working towards it. But it's like one of those things where anytime, if we had to introduce additional tooling here, like, oh, in order to run effect workflows, you have to install our special CLI or our special container or blah, 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 blah. Like anytime you have to do that, it's a paper cut that, like, as a developer, I don't want to have to install your CLI. I don't care about your CLI. I just want to write my program.
And I would also say one additional thing, that now in the AI era, what is getting more and more important is the speed of getting feedback for the AI, right? The faster you can run your tests, the faster that you can provide feedback to your coding agent, the better it is. And every time you add additional toolings like CLIs, or for example, we mentioned temporal that could have like auth solution like that. I know other ones that have, for example, specific containers that you need to run, or test containers that you need to run in your tests in order to actually test their workflow that you have defined, in tests, and that are using mocked implementation maybe for these specific activities or specific data retrieval for your activities. You have to actually spawn those containers up, and that means wasting time, right? And instead, the fact embracing the dependency injection natively in the primitive, you just push in an in-memory one and that's it. Now it's immediate. It's not something like you need to spawn up a container, wait, etc. And I really think that for the AI era, having that speed is like a game changer. Not sure how other ones think about it, but I think that this is one of the primary benefits that usually people don't speak much about, but I think it's like amazing. And the same goes, for example, for the HTTP API module that Effect has. For example, you can test API without actually spawning up an HTTP server. You can emulate locally the request and response.
In my Twitch chat, someone is asking, how do you feel about Fastify compared to Express? I don't know. I use Effect HTTP.
Indeed.
Yeah, I haven't touched Fastify or Express in like 2 or 3 years since Effect HTTP was born, and the HTTP APIs abstractions were born. Because Fastify and Express in isolation, like they're great technologies, but like when you start introducing like the production concerns that you want for your API, like having an open API endpoint or getting telemetry for your API endpoints or doing metrics to track how long things are taking, blah, 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 blah. It all starts to like feel a lot like spaghetti. And that's why I prefer using Effect, because telemetry is baked in by default. So I get my default telemetry without even having to do anything. And then I can, instrument more stuff over time. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really worked with those. I don't run a big enough project to merit anything bigger. You don't even need a big, like, I don't consider Effect HTTP or the HTTP API abstractions in Effect to be like big per se. You can use them as extensively or not as you really want to. I just like the fact that it gives me the flexibility to introduce things over time without having to like install a new package, figure out how I'm going to integrate that package. Like, it's for me, it's a little bit more of a seamless experience. That's just me having a simple website. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a hit at Effect. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying I don't have any opinions on Fastify or Express because I don't really use them anymore. Some questions oh, go ahead, Mattia.
I would say that also I would also argue that some of the primitives of Effect are also like nicely to play with, even if you don't have something big to work off. For example, we mentioned HTTP API, and I think that for some use cases, probably even if you don't have HTTP API, both server and client, even just for the client, it is fine to use directly HTTP API and write the spec of the provided API by third party. And use just the client. You don't need to specifically have the HTTP API server. You can just use the client-side component, and that's fine as well. The API, the primitives are so nice that I see use cases for those as well, rather than building your own like HTTP client invocations with manual parameters, etc. They are just a good abstraction that you can reuse in your code, and they can even extend with custom annotations.
Does it have a way of generating a local cert? I mean, like you provide the actual platform specific server that you want to use. So for example, like if you're running on Node, you provide like the create server implementation from Node. Does it take in a local cert? Yeah, so you would do it the same way as you would do with Node. Like when you actually provide the platform specific layer. So like whether it's Bun or Node or Deno, eventually when you go to run your Effect HTTP application, you provide the platform specific implementation of HTTP. And so you can, provide your local cert the same way you would with Node or Bun or really whatever. Sometimes it gets abstracted a bit, so just curious. Yeah, no, it's in this case, you're providing the concrete server that you want to run, or the concrete platform specific implementation that you want to use. Anybody have anything that they want us to discuss or talk about or questions? I feel like we've been blathering on for 53 minutes. My God.
Times fly.
I really want to swap out our Express server for Effect HTTP. FIWS says that we did that. You can use the from web methods and use the web standard way of defining handlers and responses as a stepping stone. Yeah. That is like a valid migration strategy. The other way, it depends on whether you're going outside in or inside out. Like your handlers can be effects that you convert to web standard versions. Or if you're going outside in, you can like wrap your whole Express server with Effect, and use the Effect runtime to run specific handlers when you want to. Effect Atom for Backbone or Knockout JS when?
Well,
good question. You know what? I think that you should probably build a community package. Effect Atom Backbone.
Yeah. Effect Marionette JS or
Effect Marionette JS. God. Sebastian. So who has not used the graph module yet?
The what? Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Effect cycle
Effect
JS.
cycle. Yep.
Are we playing the memory game?
Yeah, really. Let's all talk about the oldest web framework we can think of.
Yeah, prototype JS.
I wasn't even programming even as a hobby back then. But yeah, I'm
New tools.
this little scratchpad file that I'm scrolling through is just my testing of Tim's I told you his like work for allowing you to run effect workflows on top of Cloudflare, so like the implementation of a workflow engine for Cloudflare. But yeah, once this is in a little bit of a better spot and we have like a more concrete story for deployment, I'll do an office hours on this stuff so we can talk about it. But this workflow is like pretty simple. Doesn't do anything like crazy. Can we have a guest again next week so we are not just chatting with the chat? Sebastian, stop complaining. I like the Atom question. Are there any plans to add more high-level abstractions to Atom to give it some of the DX from TanStack Query? At the moment, there are no concrete plans to do that. We have some other higher priority items that we're working on. But I think in general, yes, I think that would be a desirable thing for us. Any thoughts on me adding an FTP module?
I mean, who is even still using FTP today?
Sebastian's in competition for authoring the least used effects modules. He's got cron, which has like one user, graph, which has no users, and now he's talking about adding an FTP module. This is crazy.
Well, yeah.
Can't even give me a proper link. He probably, if you had authored an FTP module, you would have FTP'd the screenshot of the benchmarks to like some
on a public FTP server.
Yeah, and gotten a public link from there.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
In fact, 99% of people are not blocked by the FTP module.
Plot twist.
Also, big decimal, arguably -1 users. That's correct. Well, you did write big decimal. Definitely -1 users.
To be honest, I know one production application that is using the big decimal module.
Okay, fine. So that's
it's
one
0 users. It's 0 users.
Man.
I didn't want to use effect with RS for automation on video. Oh yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else cool that we merged into the library recently. I already talked about the 3 things that I was most excited about, but let's see if there was anything else.
Still blocked on effect printer.
And you will remain blocked, my friend.
Like 99% of effect users.
Just like 99% of effect users. That's right. That is right. I don't think there was any other super major PRs that we landed that I wanted to discuss. I think those were the 3 big features I wanted to talk about.
It's also funny how we released the first RC and right after the first changes that we post after RC are, hey, we removed 4 dependencies.
Hey, here's our next RC with 1,000 breaking changes. Hang on one second, let me shut my window.
But I think those are good changes, right?
I mean, I did say that we reserve the right to make breaking changes even in
Yeah.
RC. And
Yeah.
I would argue these are definitely good breaking changes.
Yeah. It is funny that Julio said, I'm sure that the moment we ship RC, we will have a breaking change. And right after we ship RC, Julio was the first one to have a breaking change.
Do you have a daily cron that reminds you to use cron?
Effect soap module.
Soap
Yes.
module. Wow.
Yes.
We need an effect
RPC over.
We need an effect XML HTTP request module.
Yeah.
Have you found peace in programming? This is a question from my Twitch chat. I have found peace in programming. It's so peaceful. I probably run cron 10,000 times per day and I'm hoping to scale to millions. My God. We found the one user of cron, everyone.
When that's effect.run.
I like OTel the most. I think the native OTel layers that we have are one of the cooler features of effect, to be honest. Like the fact that you don't need to have open telemetry installed to still get telemetry out of effect programs is, I think, is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. And also like the adoption of the semantic hotel conventions for the env name. It's amazing because then you can like just put in your application, like load the telemetry from the environment, and then in your agents.md you say, the binary, the project supports hotel standard conventions, so that the agent knows that if he wants to run telemetry collection, it just needs to provide the env when it tries to run something. Max needs to shut up.
Fine. I'm not going to talk anymore. Just kidding. Are there any like concrete questions that you folks want us to discuss about effect? Or are we just vibing today? I'm fine to keep vibing, but
Isn't technically effect yes plural? That's a good question.
Effects. Yes.
Effects.
But with the double T. What does a double T sound like?
Yeah, that's hard to pronounce. Effects.
It's the hard T.
Effect.
Effects. Well. Do you think LLM's relative unfamiliarity with effect is a liability in terms of token efficiency? It's funny that you ask that, because Mattia is working on a solution for that. I also don't really think in general it's a problem, because your LLM is going to explore your code quite extensively anyway. I'd like, does the LLM maybe have to do a little bit more work to understand how to use effect? Potentially, but I think we're working on some tooling in that direction, and also with adoption of effect increasing so dramatically in the last several months, it's clear that it's not as much of a problem as one would think. And also, I feel like the model pre-training data will get better as effect becomes more mainstream, but your LLMs are still going to explore your code base.
They are trained to do so. So also, like recently I've started to push into the LSP more diagnostics that push through detecting handwritten patterns and suggest like the alternative effect APIs that would do the same patterns in a more like effect semantic way and more effect concise ways. So yeah, even like with the LSP can also help in that direction, to also try to keep your code readable and not just feel like that your code is some like written by the AI, like 5,000 lines of code that's hard to read, but instead like suggest new APIs that the model can use in order to attempt to shrink the amount of code while maintaining the same semantic that the code has.
Sebastian says, Mattia, can you tease maybe a bit of what you're working on without revealing too much? Can you tell us what you're doing
without doing it?
Without telling us what you're doing?
I would avoid that because I'm not be sure how much I can tease without like it's still some experimentation. Yeah.
Let's just say Mattia's working on something.
Yeah. That's more than enough, I would say.
That's it. That's all you need.
Let's say that we acknowledge that we need to do something for that.
Can you talk about the process of cutting out dependencies like message packer and arbitrary? And I guess with arbitrary you mean fast check? Sorry, joined later in the stream, so I don't know if it was talked over. We talked about it, but not like, I guess not extensively. We can talk a little more about it. Mattia's working on tools for building effect with AI better. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the concept.
So why did we remove message packer, fast check, UUID, and PG dependencies from effect? Well, we wanted, for all of those different cases, we thought that we could get a better effect native integration for those things implemented. So if we take arbitrary as an example, Julio saw an opportunity to potentially have a much tighter integration between effect and schema. Effect schema and arbitrary generation, utilizing effect natively, than relying on fast check to do it. And what kind of like fell out of that work is that the arbitrary implementation that we have that's more effect native actually ends up being faster through effect than using arbitrary through effect. So like you get more efficient arbitrary generation and a like, I'll say like a cleaner API because you don't have to install a package to do it without using fast check through effect. That doesn't mean that like our implementation is straight up faster than fast check. I think the benchmarks that I have to ask Julio this, but I think the benchmarks that we ran were fast check through effect, maybe, or was it fast check natively?
I think it was fast check through effect. I think
we should probably take a look at that.
Yeah.
But the point being is that in many of the cases where we've removed a dependency in favor of a native implementation, it was because we saw an opportunity to have tighter integration with the effect runtime and potentially implement things like a little bit more efficiently for the effect runtime. Schema binary is another good like example that we talked about earlier. So instead of relying on message packer to do binary serialization, our own binary codec, schema binary, actually encodes binary data using schema faster, and it also in many cases is more compact than using message packer. So yeah, I think, and then there's another rationale for all of this, which is that reducing external dependencies helps us mitigate supply chain attacks, right? We have to worry about being affected by less packages that might be compromised. Some of these packages are really popular, so they're like targets.
Very targets, yeah.
And
also, I would say, sorry if I interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I will also say that one other additional benefit that it's kind of indirect is also that by having our own implementation of things like the binary codec or the arbitraries, instead of trying to translate our schema representation to the APIs provided by a third party library, that means that there could be like gaps of things, like of primitives that we define in schema that are not present in the other library, or vice versa. Now we have them both being the same, which means that the actual representation that gets out of the arbitrary or the binary codec is like more faithful to what the initial schema represented, which is something that is supposed to be like easy. It should be that, but when you have like two different people speaking one at each other, it's very difficult to get them to speak the same language with the same words, right? There could also always be like small like differences, or tiny like things that you expect to be the same, but well, actually, and then by having our own like native primitives, especially for things that are baked by schema, we are kind of sure that we are actually speaking of the same like representation. There is no potential like translation misunderstanding between the two libraries.
Yeah. And there was a third part of that question, which I think was related to the maintenance overhead. Where was it? In terms of maintaining complexity or functionality trades off. Yeah, we didn't want to trade off any functionality. So most of the new modules we've introduced to replace package functionality or functionality that we were getting from dependencies is not trading off in terms of functionality. Obviously, the maintenance overhead goes up anytime you introduce new code into the code base. But it's different, right? Like when you own the code, you own the code. You can make changes much easier than trying to work around, like Matthias said, small things about external dependencies that you need to work around because you can't get a fix merged upstream or something like that. So the like maintenance trade-offs are like it's definitely something we consider, but also with AI and like being able to leverage AI to help us solve problems, identify the source of bugs like faster. The maintenance overhead concerns are less, and we'd rather control the code than rely on an external dependency that we don't control if we can. There was another question from that user, also from Atia. Tested out the new TSGO LSP, and would you recommend setting all the rules to error instead of warns that are in the recommended Oxlent config?
I would say that depends on how you want the LLM workflow to behave. If you want the LLM to like prefer to get at the end of an implementation first and then do a final pass of cleaning up, I suggest warning, because it's kind of infers to the LLM a concept that it can go on, but then it needs to take a decision to fix that. Whereas if you want to like have maybe a workflow where as you code, you fix that error, I would suggest going with error, because even if you use like the methods in the LSP that forbids TSC to compile when there are errors, that works better. But again, it's more like dependent on how you have your workflow, specifically with LLMs. Because again, it's connected to what I said in past streams, that LLMs, whenever they see even one word that's different, error and word, they get completely different behaviors from that. So I think it needs to be tied to your workflow. I usually prefer warn because I prefer to do a cleanup pass at the end, a review phase and cleanup pass at the end, so that the LLM is not like wasting context and try to work against the messages that it may get while coding. Because again, it may be printed out by TSC or your lint phase.
Cool. Well, been going for an hour and 15 minutes, and we've been mostly just vibing. We talked about some interesting things. We talked about all the interesting updates in the library that came out over the last week. If there are no like other concrete questions, we'll probably like wrap up at this point. But thank you all very much for attending office hours, as always. If you do have questions that we didn't get to address during office hours this week, please feel free to drop them in the office hours chat. There's a thread for every office hours that we run. So if you want to ask a question that we didn't get to, go ahead and ask in there and we'll get to it. But yeah, cheers, everyone. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.